Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to another episode of Instruqt Creators Connect. I'm your host, Sean Carolyn, and today I'm joined by Pablo López Zaldívar. Sysdig is a leading provider of security tools for containers, Kubernetes, and cloud workloads. So Pablo, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shane. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, your sound is great.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me here, Sean. So I'm a curriculum developer here at Sysdig. I have been creating and maintaining technical content for the Sysdig education team during the last 3 years. About my background, I studied psychology, and during those years, and also after I graduated, I worked as a research assistant. And although it was long ago, what I learned there gave me a valuable background to create better training and a better learning experience for our customers, or at least try it. And I also went back to university to study computer science. And at the third year, I had the opportunity to join an amazing team at Sysdig. So here I am.
Great, thank you. You have such an interesting background. It's a combination of, education, psychology, and computer science. And I'm very interested to learn about what you've observed at the intersection, right, of education and technology. This is my slide. I'm Sean Carolyn, head of sales engineering and pre-sales at Instruqt. In my past life, I was a systems administrator. I like building robots and gadgets. And today the focus is on Pablo and Sysdig. So let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so here we can talk about how are we using the Instruqt platform today. So the Sysdig education team is part of the customer success department. So basically for us, Instruqt is a tool to provide technical training for our customers. So all of the labs that we have in Instruqt are also available for employees and also for some partners. Part of our training is public and free at learn.sysdig.com because part of the content that we create is for open source tools like Falco and Prometheus. And we also have a learning management system for customers where we can easily embed all of the Instruqt tracks that we have.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. For folks who are brand new and maybe you just joined the webinar, Instruqt is a virtual labs platform. And Sysdig is making heavy usage of things like virtual machines and Kubernetes environments, all of it accessible through a web browser. So that kind of leads to our next slide. Tell us a little bit about how you found out about Instruqt and the early stages. What were you maybe doing before?
Yeah, well, we were using Katacoda. We were pretty happy with it because it was maybe not the unique, but there was not a lot of alternatives out there. So we had some problems with it because of, sometimes the machines that were deployed for the labs were not working fine, but more or less the experience was fine. And they stopped providing the service for us. We started looking for different alternatives for this. And we did a lot of proofs of concept with different vendors, including Instruqt. And I believe that we were like 2 months reviewing every aspect to try to make a good decision. And finally, we selected Instruqt for this training.
Excellent. And I know that some of your team members are coders and developers, while others might be more focused on writing end user content and instructions. Could you share with us how these different types of users are able to work together in the same platform?
Yeah, we have always been a small team. During the last year, we have grown to full 5 members. And although we are all from different backgrounds, we all play similar roles using Instruqt. For me, that means that Instruqt is really easy to use once that you take the first steps. And yeah, I can tell you that every member in the team has been a native contributor of when creating and maintaining the content that we have in our catalog, the hands-on labs. So yeah, right now I can also tell you that we are creating technical training for both Sysdig and some of the open source tools that Sysdig contributes to. And just as a quick introduction to Sysdig for those who might not heard about us, Sysdig is helping us, our customers, to confidently secure containers, Kubernetes, and cloud workloads. That's one of the other reasons why we like Instruqt, because we can append a cloud account to our training. Yeah, Sysdig can be used to scan images, detect and respond to runtime threats, and also to validate the cloud posture, the security posture, and also for observability, to monitor and troubleshoot your application. So as you can see, there are a lot of different use cases. So we need a training platform with a lot of flexibility, but also at the same time to be able to, let's say, replicate some of the steps that are common across labs. So Instruqt for us was the best alternative. Yeah.
So Sysdig has a lot of need to be able to show observability and security across lots of different types of infrastructure, it sounds like.
That's part of the training that we have, and also about the security.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover. So maybe you could tell us about GitOps and you know, how it's helped you to manage all of this content and different environments that you have to train in.
Yeah, well, first let's say, why do I believe that this is super important? If there are any software developer listening to this talk, all of the GitOps principles and concepts that we are going to share are going to be familiar, because these ideas have been around since 2017. It's nothing new, but we hope to reach some instructional designers as me who might not know about this. Part of the reason for this is that we have seen that all of the tools available out there, not just about hands-on labs, but also for learning management systems, they are all using graphical user interfaces where you need to do a lot of clicks to replicate every workflow. So you need to spend a lot of time, and you cannot really, it doesn't scale. So for example, I have a good example from yesterday. We needed to access the visibility permissions for a learning path that we created in the LMS for more than 50 users. And we have to follow the same steps for every single user, one after the other. So we believe that there are alternatives methods, because with Instruqt, when we need to update something in all of our tracks, we just need to do a grep, find all the places, replace, and send all the changes back to the Instruqt backend. So yeah, that's why we believe this can be useful also for the, maybe not just for instructional designers, for all of the people out there creating technical content, the intersection of both groups, let's say.
And can you tell us some more about some of the challenges and problems that you're looking to solve?
Yeah. So we were able to produce highly technical content, but there was not a well-defined development and review process. Sometimes it was not clear what was the current status of a lab and what to do next. And it was all about the tools, not the team. There was not a development pipeline well-defined like the one that we have now. So after that, there was no automatic validation or test of the content. It was all on the responsibility of the developer. So it was completely manual. There was no way to automatically test a track. Every time we change something, we needed to test it. And if you forget, you might be releasing some bugs and errors into a production track.
So in other words, an instructor's worst nightmare, right, is to wake up and show up for their training and surprise, something broke, right? The lab doesn't work for anyone. Yeah, or users pinging at your email from a different time zone saying that a lab is not working. Yeah, things like that. Okay, yeah, I understand. So, yeah, the world of the education engineer, you depend on these softwares to be working, right? So it's important to test them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also we finally, yeah, labs were often broken because, I mean, I believe that when you create technical content, it's normal that labs break from time to time because the product is changing and it's a complex system. But there was no way to test automatically every day or every week the health status of the labs. Yeah, that was a big problem right now.
You bring in an
Yeah.
important point, I think, in that the content gets created, but it's not done. You know,
Exactly.
like sometimes people have this perception that you write a course and deliver it and then it's done forever. But there's a certain amount of maintenance and upkeep that has to go on because the thing you're training is also changing, right? The external world is changing. And so the content can get out of date very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. I'm not going to lie. This is not like Wonderland like now because of what you said. Labs still break, but now we sleep a little bit better because we know that we are testing all of our labs regularly. So whenever something small changes that is going to break the lab, we can detect it before this impacts the user experience. So we are far better now in this sense.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we'll never solve it 100%, but you know greatly reduce the amount of
Yeah,
especially preventing it from reaching the end user is the important thing, right?
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
there will be a bug, but you can get ahead of it earlier now. So how are you using GitOps with your own content, and what's kind of the current state of your GitOps driven education platform?
Yeah, I can say that during the last year, we have been applying those principles more or less systematically to create and maintain our labs. And we are also trying to extend this to other of the tools that we are using with the LMS. But the area in which this is more developed is in the hands-on labs with Instruqt, because all of the tools that you are providing out of the box. So just to get started with the topic, I don't want this to be a theoretical talk or abstract talk at all about GitOps principles, but I would like to share some of our tracks in production, some of the content that we are building in Instruqt, and also the most interesting part, in my opinion, the pipeline that the whole team is building to try to automate stuff and make the process more efficient.
Excellent. Well, listeners, put on your scuba gear. We're going on a deep dive. Pablo's going to take us to the bottom of this rabbit hole. And if you have questions along the way, post them in the Q&A, and I'll make sure that he sees them at the appropriate point.
Okay, thank you. So before we get into that, just a quick introduction about what's Git, GitHub, and GitOps in case somebody is not familiar with this. Git is just an open source system heavily used by a lot of software teams out there. It tracks every change to a project, what is changed, who did the change, and when. And it also provides some methods to revert these changes. And also provide methods for all of the team members to work in parallel without creating conflict. We are using GitHub. This is like an enterprise version of Git that it's adding more functions. One of those functions are the GitHub actions that we are using to test to run the test for our labs, but we'll talk more about it later. So instead of trying to define what is GitOps during the rest of the talk, we are going to review the principles and see how we are applying them in our tracks. So these are the principles, and instead of talking about them directly here, we are going to jump to the next one. So what's the declarative desired state? So basically a declaration of the desired state of a track can be any file that is defining every possible aspect of the track without ambiguities. So everybody can go there and see what's the state of the track. And this file, this is important, can also be used by agents or automations to do things with it. So first, we need a way to define our tracks as code. And before checking, and now gets the demo, before checking how this files looks like, let's see first what's a real real track in production. So this is just a screen capture that I created, but I believe that it's going to be better if we go live here. So for this lab, we have two machines, two virtual machines that we are using to create a Kubernetes cluster. You can see that the user just need to browse to this link, to this address in here, and everything is going to be ready for them. We are providing instructions. And yeah, here we explain a little bit of theory, and we include here an assignment. These are the instructions for the user to know what he needs to do to complete a challenge. And a track is nothing more. A lab is nothing more than a set of challenges that the user needs to complete. More things. We can also embed different services. For example, this is the Sysdig secure dashboard. And yeah, this is what we are asking the user to do here to create a Kubernetes network policy based on the application activity. Here we can also see the application that is running in the server here. One of these ones here. So yeah, more things about a track. We can also check the progress. So for example, I am a user. I want to see how am I doing it. So I click here and I see that I haven't applied the policy. So I just need to follow the steps here, create the policy. This is too long. I'm not going to do it right now. And after that, I can check again. And with this script, with this automation, we can see if the user provided the right answer, if he did the proper configuration, and proceed to the next one.
So Pablo, I would like to just let our audience know how amazing what you built here is. Like what we're looking at is a full-blown Kubernetes cluster with Sysdig and a sample application, very complex environment. If you tried to build this by hand, how long do you think it would take you just to set this up from scratch?
I don't know, but considering also security issues and all the maintenance that you need to do this, I don't know. We used to have something similar for ILT training. It was a script with some Python, COPS, and Terraform to deploy something similar to this, and it was failing most of the time. And this is not, so I cannot really give you a number here.
And now with this environment, it's basically a pop-up, training lab. You push a button and all this stuff just, deploys itself and your student can start learning right away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, excellent. Please continue.
Yeah, okay. So this is, sorry, let's go back to the slides. So this is what the user see. A lab is nothing more than instructions, infrastructure, some automation, and yeah, also of course the metadata of the lab, like title, description, task, that's useful for management. And this is how it maps to the different files. So let's see also how it looks for the developer. These are the source code files of one of the labs. So here you can see in my terminal, for every challenge we have the different scripts, the assignment, and everything. So we are going to be an overview without going into many details of every one of these files. So first, here below, you can see how we are defining the infrastructure for the lab that we saw before. We have two virtual machines. We are using even a custom image here to create the Kubernetes cluster. We define the size of the machine. So here you can define exactly what you need. If you need a bigger machine with more resources, you can get it. Okay, so it's pretty flexible. Next one, this is just an example, a bash script that we are using to check that the user, the error that I got before about not creating the policy, this is the same one. This is great from a learning perspective because we can provide real feedback instantly to the user. So whenever he wants to check, he can know exactly what's going wrong, or if it's right, he can proceed to the next challenge. So next one, this is the track.yaml. This is like the main file. Let's say here we are defining all the metadata for the track, like what's the title, description, tags, and other visibility options. And yeah, one of the things that I like more about Instruqt is that I don't really need to care about formatting when I create the content because it's using Markdown. It's super easy, super quick, let's say, to learn, and you don't really need to care a lot about the formatting. As I said, you just write your content and it's going to give it a nice feel and look. And yeah, also this is important, the tabs that we had embedded into the lab before, this is how we define it. So as you can see, it's super easy to build this kind of lab. And also if you need to create something new, you can just take one of the existing labs, you copy paste, and from here, you just need to modify what you need. So it's, for me, now that I know the platform, it's super easy to create new content.
And did you have some experience with infrastructure as code before coming to Instruqt?
Not really. I used to talk a bit with other colleagues at the company about it, but I never really implemented or used something like other than basic commands with Terraform. That I would say that that's what everybody knows.
Yeah,
right
so
now
the configuration language is very simple. It's just YAML and Markdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
very nice. It's quite approachable. I think you know, you could call it lab environment as code. You know, they say
Yeah.
infrastructure as code, but now instead of having like a wiki or a, you know, here's how you stand up your lab, it's all a code that you can test and run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's super easy
So
for
that's what we
users.
mean by declarative state, right? This is how the lab should be, you know, and you define all that in the code.
Yeah, exactly. And most importantly, we have like a single source of truth. So this state of the lab is going to be saved in a, this is the next principle, is going to be saved in a Git repository. So we can see in there all of the changes. We are going to skip this one. And yeah, second principle, immutable versioning of the state. So right now we can review what is the state of our tracks at any given point in time, not use the latest state because of this declarative state and because of the Git repository. So this grants us the ability to recover super quickly from an error. I have another example, again, about the LMS, not with Instruqt. A few weeks ago, one of the main pages of our LMS was deleted completely because of a human error, and there was not a revert option or some code that we could review, see what were the changes, and get back to there. So this is also something that we really like, that we are implementing right now, and this is super useful. And yeah, one reason I was not able to find an example about Instruqt, it's because of the third principle. Every change that we make right now to the content before it releases is tested. So whenever a developer makes changes to a track, if the tests fail or there's something wrong, we cannot release that content into production. So that's why I couldn't find an example where a lab was broken because of a human error. And that is one of the most powerful features of Instruqt, in my opinion, that you can test everything before you deploy it. So yeah, before we get into the next point, I believe that maybe I took this from your docs. I
Yes,
don't know
it
if you want.
looks familiar.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about this. I can do it myself. The idea is just to give a general idea about the different kind of scripts.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about lifecycle scripts. So every track has these scripts that can run in the background to do things like set up the challenge for your students, to check their work. And you can even solve the challenge using a script. So this enables things like skipping ahead. You can fast forward through challenges because the solve scripts, you know, are able to navigate the track. And this enables automated testing too. So you can use these lifecycle scripts to simulate a student, as you see in the middle, here. We run a setup script, and then we expect the student to try and solve the challenge. We check that with the check script, right? And then if the student passes the check, they can move on. So these same scripts are used in the world of software testing, right? Where you can have a robot run through the entire track, start to finish. And then clean up optionally, you can delete things, but Instruqt will wipe out the entire sandbox at the end. So when your student is done, the cloud accounts, the VMs, the Kubernetes, all of it gets completely deleted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's true. So why we were talking about this? So this is super important, what Sean explained, to understand what is the third principle about approved changes being automatically applied. So we have already seen what are the advantages of having our labs defined as code, but that's not all. The main difference between Katacoda and Instruqt, in my opinion, is that you are providing some tools to do things with these tracks, to do checks or apply changes or whatever automatically. So again, let's take one step back and let's imagine, as you said, an agent or a new team member, whatever, that is going to do all the boring stuff for you, so you don't have to do it. Okay, so this is the agent, the Instruqt CLI tool. And yeah, let's review the, let's say, most important commands, in my opinion. So the ones that we are using right now are validate, test, and logs. With validate, we can check that all of the changes that we make to a track are in the expected format, that is following that manifest that's in defined when talking about the infrastructure as code. With test, and this is why we were talking about the lifecycle scripts. With test, we are going to run all those scripts in order for every challenge to see that every track in production is working as expected. And this is where we can see if something is wrong or not. And finally, with the logs, this is super useful for debugging. We can see every log of the environment and application running in the track when something fails. So we can go back in time, let's say, and see what failed, so we can fix it. Yeah, of course, there are other commands that I'm not going to cover here, but let me finish with two more, with the track pull and track push. These two are super important, in my opinion. We use these ones to apply the change that we make locally here from my laptop to the Instruqt backend, or to get the latest change. It works in the same way that if, for example, let me show you this super quickly. So if you go to the developer homepage in here, and I start modifying, this track is from one of my colleagues, Luca, I can modify from here the track. I'm not going to do it, but we could, okay, and save changes. So this is equivalent to doing from my terminal Instruqt track push after doing some changes in the track. And why are we talking about these two commands? They are important because we can put them directly into the automation. So instead of, let me take one step back, instead of doing it directly against the Instruqt backend, we can just set up an automation in GitHub. So whenever we make some changes in there, everything is going to be tested automatically, and no changes are going to be applied to the Instruqt backend if some of these tests are failing. So let's learn more about this pipeline, let's say. So whenever we open a review process for an existing track, a temporary version of the track is created. This is important because we can keep the same track in production, it's not affected, and we can work in a temporary one. So the development process is not going to affect our user experience. And whenever the user makes changes, the automation that we have, I'm going to show you one example here, is going to check which tracks are modified, and after that is going to run the test. Let me show you this one here. You are seeing still my screen, right?
Yep, we see the Falco fix broken solve script.
Yeah, okay. So this is something that another one of my colleagues, Pablo Musa, fixed the other day. He saw that one of the tracks was broken. So he made some changes. It was a small fix. And here automatically with his changes, we can see the details. And this is the automation. So if we go in there to details, we can see that in this machine that was running in the GitHub servers, we were able to set up the Instruqt CLI, like the same way that it's set up in our machines, validate the content, push changes for the temporary tract, and test the tract. This is what you see when you run test against a tract. For every challenge, again, you execute the setup script, you check it fails because you haven't really solved yet the challenge, you solve it, and after you check, as you already solve it, it success. And this is for every challenge. And we need it all to be green in order to be ready to be released. Okay. So yeah, this is the automation. And also let's review another example because these are not all the tests that we have. We also have like a peer review discussion where, for example, these are some changes that I did for a assessment lab, kind of an exam. Pablo agreed to review it and he saw that it was not ready. So here you can see a lot of comments that he included. Actually, they were quite a lot. And until all of these comments are not approved and fixed, we cannot really merge the changes and release the new changes into production. So it is not just about the automation here, the test that we check, but we also need the approval from another curriculum developer to release the content. So this is why we believe this is kind of structuring the way we work, because it gives us some steps that are predictable and make us more efficient.
So Pablo, we did have one question from Greg. He wants to know, have you disabled the ability to make changes in the UI, or is it just sort of an honor system that we don't edit the UI?
That's a great question. Yeah, okay. This is something that we were discussing in the team. We can set up some permissions, let's say, like, for example, that use the, I believe that it is like, if you are not the author of a track, you cannot make changes in there. So we were thinking about removing us as authors of all of the tracks, so we could just make changes through the API. That's something that we haven't implemented yet, because although I'm talking a lot about working with the CLI from time to time, we also need to fix directly something at the Instruqt user interface here, the graphical interface, because let's be honest, this is super quickly. If I need to make a change in here, whatever it is, I just click save and the change is going to be instantly applied. So we need to find a balance in there. I hope I have answered your question. We are not doing it right now.
That was a great answer. And yeah, folks are curious. The technical answer to the question is you remove all of the track developers from the track code, and then only a super admin could make changes, right? So it is possible if you want to go, command line source code only, you can do it. But as Pablo mentioned, there are times when, it's very convenient and easy. You just need to make a quick change in the UI. It's nice to have that option. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, where we are. Yeah, so just to take one step back, we also need the specific approval from a college to merge the changes and also to resolve all of the conversation in there. And I also wanted to show you, this example is great because this is not something that we discover ourselves or a user reported, but this is something that we detected because of weekly test. As I told you before, and this is going to be the last principle. Okay.
Wait, so I want to highlight that comment there real quick. No one changed anything. This was just a regular scheduled weekly test that ran that caught something that could have broken. Is that right?
Yeah, we are running tests every Monday at 4 a.m. And this is how we detected this error. We saw Let me show you, where is this, sorry. Okay, 1 second, please. So every week we are running this part and we can see that all of our tracks are green, perfect. That's what we want to see, but one of them was broken. And Pablo saw it, go to the logs, went to the logs, and so what was the error. So it was not a user saying, hey, this is broken. We were able to fix it before it was noticed by other people out there. And
that's excellent. It's like an early warning system for your education content and labs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And just taking one step back, because I skipped one part, this principle is also about the state reconciliation. We talked about the desired state, and the discrepancies between the desired state and the state in production is something that we don't want. How this kind of discrepancies happens. If I go to the web UI, because I'm doing some webinar with Son here, and I make some changes that I don't want to do it, that's something that we need to remove from there. So once a week before we run the test, we are doing a Instruqt track force that is nothing more than saying, hey, take the state definition that we have in the GitHub repository and erase, not erase, but overwrite everything in the Instruqt backend with the status here, because this is what we want right now. And yeah, just to add more comments, reconciliation is normally more complex because it requires an agent that is constantly checking what's the state of the application in production. But here we don't really have a procedure to do that. We are just overwriting the content.
You just wipe it out and say, look, this is the source of truth, and
exactly.
What's in production will match this source of truth.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Yeah. That way, at any given point in time, you know exactly what's in production. There's no question about, unknown changes.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to show you. This is how we detected the error that Pablo fixed last week because of the automated test. Yeah, so what I wanted also to say here, that this is not going to guarantee that the content is going to be perfect all of the time, but tests are going to ensure that a minimum set of conditions defined in the script are met. Like, for example, if we ask the user to create a policy in the solve script, we can create the policy, and with the check we created, the policy was created. So in general, the more robust the test, the better for this to improve the quality of the content. Yeah, this is the final part. This is going to be a little bit opinionated, sorry, but when creating tests for Instruqt, I believe that we can discern between different types of tests, ones that are of less quality and ones that have more quality. In my opinion, not having tests can be fine at all. There are some cases in which you don't really need to test anything. You are just providing some instructions, and then you jump to the next challenge. And in the top of the list here, it's adding tests for everything here. What are the different kind of tests that I am putting here? So user check is just asking the user, for example, to review something in the web UI of your product. Like, for example, what is the level of this alert in Sysdig Secure, and put the number in a file. That's something that we can test with the check scripts, but that's not going to check the application. So that's why it's better, because if we are also checking the application, we can see if the demo that we have is broken or not. If we are just checking the user answers, the application could be broken, but we wouldn't know in the test.
So you get more value from the app check, because it answers the question very clearly, right? Is the app working? Can you do a thing?
Yeah, and also I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that for the Falco content, Falco is really on the early stages of development. It's like 0.30 or something like that. I believe it was Pablo. We were able to detect a bug in a new release of the product because of this test. So we are not just testing the user, we can also test the application.
In other words, even Falco got an early warning from your test, right? The software provider.
Yeah, and they were able to fix it super quickly.
Excellent.
And yeah, last comment about the test. Also, I don't know if you are familiar with the concept of idempotence, but this means that no matter what are the changes that the user is applying to the environment, we should try to build our scripts in a way that, again, no matter the changes, we can recover to a previous known state and continue. So for example, imagine that my solve script is going to append a part of a configuration file to an existing file. But imagine that the user breaks the previous part. If we try to apply that file with the wrong changes of the user, that's going to break the lab. So whenever we are using the solve script, we should try to recover the desired state of the labs. That's something that I believe is super important. We are not yet applying. Yeah, sorry.
In other words, you need to know exactly what state that file is in. It needs to be clean, right? Because if the user messes it up, you know, it could cause unexpected results.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all about test.
Yeah, let's talk about where you're headed in the future. What's next on the roadmap?
Okay, so we also have a slide for that. And the main goal for us, we are curriculum developers. So the main goal is to keep building content in Instruqt to try to be feature complete. That's something that we are still not yet there, but I believe that we can do it. And yeah, of course, we want to keep extending the pipeline to ease the development process. We really like what we are building with Instruqt, all this automation, because it solves it. It's making the process a whole easier, a lot easier. So yeah, we want to keep updating it as much as we can. Like for example, to check the error logs, now we need to run a different command, but we are working on something to get those error logs with the test all in the same place. So we can just see what's wrong. And yeah, there are a lot of other things that we would like to automate and improve. And yeah, something that I believe is not really well developed in our tooling is the LMS. So maybe Instruqt could be expanded to a whole feature LMS. I'm sure that more than one person out there would love this Instruqt becoming a full LMS with the same approach of resources as code. Yeah, that's all. I hope it was not too boring. Thank you. Great. To the Instruqt team. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, great presentation, Pablo. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of questions before we open up to the audience for Q&A. LMS, Learning Management System. You've been working with these for a while. Would you agree that they're a little behind the technology curve? You know, and you're a very, you know, advanced automated shop, and then you try to use this tool and, you know, it doesn't feel right. You're like, where's my YAML, right? Where's my config file?
Yeah, exactly. I believe it's a difficult question. If they are designing the product like this, is because that there are users that doesn't really know about other alternatives and they like it and they can be successful using them. But that doesn't mean that it's the better approach, let's say. I believe that there is a gap in there. Something like the same approach that Instruqt is providing for us to build content for learning management systems, it will be awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're adding new features. I won't commit that Instruqt may never become a full-featured LMS. That's the reason people use these, right? Is because you get all of this extra stuff and you know things you can do to build content and courses. But LMS vendors of the world, listen up. You know, we want APIs. Help us automate this stuff, right? It's very frustrating when you're a tool builder, right, to run into a thing that you can't automate, you know, and then you go, oh man, you know, I wanted to have this completely scripted, but there's some blocker there.
Yeah, exactly.
So at least the labs, the Instruqt part, it seems to have saved you a lot of time and trouble and, building these environments. With that in mind, could you give any advice to someone who's just starting out on this path, right? I imagine that some folks may be tuning in who, they still have that, Word doc or wiki page, and, here's the cloud account where you have to build your own, training lab. What advice could you give to those folks based on what you've learned over this journey?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, in my opinion, just try to start as soon as possible building something. It doesn't really have to be too complex, but just something that is going to demo your application and that is going to be useful for our users, for your users. And from there, you can start improving the content. We were talking about a lot about the scripts, but that's not required at all. You can just build a lab with the environment, the instructions, and you don't really need to have the scripts in there to create any automation. Just instructions to the user to follow, and after that you can just improve it. So I will just try to make it incremental. Don't use all of the features that Instruqt is providing right now because they are a lot. And yeah, also to get familiar with all of the, let's say, objects or features that Instruqt is providing. And maybe the CLI is not the best idea. And this pipeline that we were talking about, maybe it's better to start using first the web UI. And after that, when you have a couple of labs and you have finished the proof of concept, you can start building this automation.
Great tips. Thanks so much. So we're going to move on to Q&A from the audience. First one is from Tom. Being able to quickly deploy an environment is great. We all love it, especially in live sessions where you have different OSs and levels of skill, etc. Tom says, however, I worry how much gets hidden behind the curtain. What do you do to make sure students are able to take what they've learned in Instruqt out of Instruqt and into their own development environments?
Well, that's a difficult question. I don't really have data to support that. We haven't really implemented yet analytics or assessment tools to validate or assess how effective is the training that we are building. But I will say that the way that we are defining the labs, the user is going to take, for example, if we want them to be able to create a Kubernetes network policy in our lab, they are going to need it to create it. So this is not just watching a video. The user really needs to practice and do the thing that we are training. So in that way, I believe that we are doing it. But being honest with you, we are not really assessing the impact of this training after the training.
Right.
But
so in other words, the user may not be taking code out of the sandbox, but for certain that if they finish the track, they managed to set up Kubernetes and finish a challenge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they're taking valuable skills, or at least proving that they were able to do a thing, because it is a hands-on lab. It's not just, people sometimes take these trainings and put the video on mute, or fast forward through and next. But with this type of instructional content, you can make it as complex or as simple as you want.
Yeah.
Right. So I think Sysdig probably has some really simple, 101 introductory labs. But from what I've seen, you've got some very advanced topics in there as well.
Trying to answer that question again, this is actually a nice example. We have a lab that is not educational at all. It's just an exam for all of the content that we build for Falco. It's not a certification at all, but the final lab, we are not really providing any instruction. So in that way, we are checking that everything that the student learn, of course, he can access Google, cheat sets, or whatever, but we are really assessing in there that if they learn something or not. We are, of course, removing the skipped option. So if they progress to the next challenge, that means that they know how to continue. So yeah, you can build whatever you want with this, not only for training, but also for assessment.
So you have an assessment track. It's the kid gloves come off and you're on your own now, right? You're going to finish this track on your own. There's no skipping, there's no hand-holding or commands to copy, right? You need to know your stuff to complete it.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question, how do you keep track of usage and metrics around which tracks are being consumed? I could speak a little bit to that. We do gather basic metrics from invites. So if you use an invite, you'll see who claimed the invite, how far they got in the tracks that you invited them to. There are also kind of aggregate metrics where you can see how well is a track performing. And Pablo, you could probably speak a little more to if and how Sysdig is utilizing some of that data.
Right now, I believe that Instruqt released a GraphQL API or something like that. I haven't used it, but I believe that there is a lot of interesting data in there. Also, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
We are not using this. We are using the LMS metrics because of historic reasons, let's say. But here you can see for every track some, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it because I don't use it, but for every track, you can see what's the impact, user happiness, statistics, like how many people is taking this training, yeah, how many tracks were completed in the last days. So yeah, that's it. I was going to say something. I don't know if you asked about the particular data of the impact that our labs are having. I can tell you that the first set of labs that we released, they were like 7 Falco labs. And of course, we did a lot of promotion because of the new platform. So we cannot really compare with the previous labs. But I can tell you that in the analytics, we saw like a super big spike in usage with the new tracks. So I can tell that our users loves the platform.
Yeah, it's still early days. I feel like we're sitting on this mountain of data and people are just beginning to realize how valuable it can be. You know, and the GraphQL is a great way to export some of that data if you have your own analytics system. We can also integrate with things like HubSpot and Salesforce. So Pablo's focus is mainly education and delighting the user, which is awesome, near and dear to my heart. But you know, the marketing folks might want to know, did that student, you know, become a lead, right? Did they buy our software later? And so we could provide that type of data as well. Next question is from Greg. Is your track development process also integrated with the machine image building process? For instance, if a track change also requires a change to a custom image, is there an automated way to handle that? Or do you have to do some manual work for branching and merging?
Yeah, great question again from Greg. That's one of the things in our backlog. Pablo Musa was thinking about automating it. I don't know if you know how this is implemented, but it's using, I believe that is using Terraform. I don't remember correctly right now, but the scripts that Instruqt is providing, it's using Terraform to define what are the scripts that we use to build the image in GCP. Right now it's a manual process. If we make changes to the base images, we don't have a lot of them. We have a K3s environment for Kubernetes, a single Linux host with containerd, another one with Docker because of some compatibility issues, but we don't really have a lot of custom images. So whenever we need to make changes, we just go there, run again the scripts in there, and it generates the image. But it will be great to have another GitHub action.
Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah,
sorry. A mic check. Is Pablo frozen for anyone else?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you just came back. Okay, I had a little. I don't know if it was me or the Zoom, okay, but I lost you for a moment.
I can answer again in case it was me. So we don't really have this is a manual process right now that we need to run locally from our laptops. But I believe that this is what you are suggesting, Greg. Yes, it will be great to have an automation at GitHub too. So whenever we make changes to those those scripts, the images are automated. And of course, we change in the track the custom image to use the new one. Yeah, that would be great.
I feel like image management is its own art form. You know, you need to really think about, do I put everything in the image? But now I have to manage many images, right? And update the image all the time. But some things are so slow, right? And so big, you need to put them in the image. So it's finding that balance between, you know, keeping a good solid base image, but being able to quickly configure it, right, when you spin it up, if possible. I got a couple more. Question for Pablo: are there any notable issues that you faced while adopting the GitOps approach? So any challenges along the way? And then the second question was, how do you go about writing tests for user input that you might not know beforehand, but could break the track?
Okay, I need to think about second question, but the first one, sorry, can you repeat it again?
Yeah, any notable issues or challenges as you tried to do this GitOps method, this GitOps approach?
Not really, because, well, there has been issues and discussions internally in the team, because this is also, it's not just about procedures, but a culture, let's say, that the whole team needs to embrace and try to apply. But other than that, it has been more or less easy because it has been incremental. All of the things that we have been talking about here, it's not something that we applied in a day. We made some changes, we improved the pipeline, we saw what we liked, what we don't, and based on that, we try to improve it every day.
Yeah, it seems that CI/CD is a solved problem, you know, in the world of software. This is just, you know, every day, everybody understands you do testing, and it's still new in the world of education content. But you didn't have to reinvent the wheel, right? In other words, to understand a pull request and, you know, doing your testing in a branch, and all of those concepts were already there, right? You just had to put them together with Instruqt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the
Okay, and
second
then the
question,
second one was,
managing user
how do you
input.
write tests, right? How do you know what to test for user input that you might, you know, not even know what the user is going to create, right?
We can just review if we have time. I believe that yeah, let's go super quickly. So for the lab that we were reviewing before, or actually, let me show you here. So, sorry, Skillyard. So for example, here, we just need to add different checks. So first we check that Falco is running, that the values.file that we loaded, that we try to load is loaded. So it's just about doing different checks. It's just seeing what are you asking the user to do and try to apply it here.
And any other advice on testing? When you think about testing, does it make sense to work backwards from the goal, and how do you know what to test?
Again, it all depends of what you are demoing on the challenge. And again, as I saw before in this slide, trying not just to test the configuration files or user input like a quiz, but trying to evaluate the, let's say, the result of the changes in the application. Like, for example, if we are using Falco is a tool to detect security incidents. If we ask the user to configure a new rule to detect an event, we are not checking the rule that he wrote, because he could be writing that rule in a lot of different ways. We are checking with the test that that rule is effective. So we trigger that behavior, and we see if that rule is able to detect it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say here. I believe that's a good test, in my opinion.
Great.
Or at least better than a quiz.
All right, I think we have time for one more from Michael. The GitHub actions seem like they required some effort to get correct to make this work. How much effort did it require to get those GitHub actions into a workable state for your workflow?
I don't know. We have been using Instruqt almost for a year, I believe. And this is something that we have been spending some weeks, some time every week. So I cannot really tell you because we have been creating content, but this has also been something important for us because we know that this is going to improve things for us.
So I can also add some onto that. We now have a supported GitHub action that you can just copy and use. Sysdig are an early user of ours, so they had to blaze their own trail, in many areas. We took a lot of that, took a look at it, and built a standard GitHub action that if a new user comes along, it's a lot easier than it would have been for Pablo and his team, because we were in a kind of earlier stage a year ago. All right, that brings us right to the hour. So I want to thank you again for your time. Thanks to Pablo and Sysdig for joining us. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, so thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody.